So I haven't really been making much in terms of videos about things going on with Iran and whatever, mainly because I've said what I've needed to say. That's just it, So and I'm not gonna be sitting here and I'm not gonna keep making videos of the same stuff over and over and over again. That's just not really what I like to do. Um, if I think it's something worth talking about, I will talk about it. If it's not something worth talking about, or if I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, I'm not really going to say anything. So I've said my piece. I've said what I think, and there was nothing left to say. So, but this ceasefire, you know, sort of, is brought up more things to discuss, and I want to discuss some of those things right now. Of course, we have ground news here. Ground Branch is a video game. So ground news, you have, the Dow closes up more than 1,300 points after U.S.-Iran ceasefire. Iran accuses U.S. of violating three clauses of 10-point framework before Islamabad meetings. Um, it says this is interesting here. Israel said Israel was not informed of U.S.-Iran ceasefire plan until late stages of discussion was displeased. So I want to say this real quickly here. I really, really, this is something I think is really important to talk about because what I want to discuss is not so much the ceasefire issue because the simple fact is there's so much, just information out there right now. You can pretty much find anything about what you want to believe, whatever side you fall on this whole issue. But there are a few things I think that are set in stone, as it were. But this is one of the things I find really interesting here. So before I jump into this, first, I just want to say what I what I really want to talk about here is how I think this whole situation is blowing up narratives left and right. And one of the narratives is this is all Israel's war and Israel's making the United States fight its war. And you got people go and say things like, well, Trump is covering up the Epstein files with this war. He's like, he was just like, oh crap, they're about to get unveiled. Let's just go blow up Iran. The silly things like that have no factual basis in them whatsoever. It's just kind of like you just take one little sort of ancillary factor over here and an ancillary factor over there, and you just, even though there's gaps between putting those two together, you just smash them together anyway, and you make a claim. You know, correlation is not always causation. So that's one of the things I just cannot take conspiracy theories seriously anymore. I mean, we've run away with them so much, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But the whole idea that the United States military is effectively a mercenary army for Israel, well, this is getting blown out of the water with stuff like this. Israel was not informed of U.S.-Iran ceasefire plan until late stages of discussion. It was displeased. So the extent of Israel's involvement was a phone call U.S. President Donald Trump made with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shortly before the ceasefire was announced. So we have here different websites talking about this. Israel was not informed of U.S. Iran ceasefire plan until late stage discussion. And this one says Israel was later informed of ceasefire negotiations with Iran and was upset that it had not been consulted, says the newspaper. So Israel was not very happy with the ceasefire. So how does that fit into this idea that the United States is working for Israel? Well, that doesn't. It doesn't fit at all. um, what I had said earlier makes more sense. And guys, this is like before I move any farther, what the question you have to constantly ask yourself is, what is the simplest explanation? What before we jump into we this is about so when you have a theory, right? Like again, the theory that this is all Israel, and the United States is just doing the bidding of Israel. Well, with something like this, now you're going to have to come up with an explanation that helps explain the theory. You have to come up with a theory to explain the theory. That is complicating your explanation even more. Just go with the simpler explanation. The simpler explanation is not Well, the United States is working for Israel, they're protecting Israel, and all of Israel's secrets that it had with Epstein. That's not just no supporting evidence for that. There is more evidence for the idea that, or what is more likely, is that Israel sees Iran as a threat to its survival. And you can agree with that, you can disagree with that. I don't care, really. But yes, I'm telling you how Israel sees it. Iran is a threat to its survival. The United States, under Donald Trump's leadership, sees Iran as a thorn in the side of making the Middle East a booming economy that would be beneficial to everybody in the rest of the world. That's how Donald Trump sees it. Based on all the evidence I see, given that the kind of person that Donald Trump is, he's a businessman. He's not a madman, but that's how Donald Trump sees it. So with with Iran's leadership being very idealistic rather than just practical business savvy guys who just let's just make a deal. That's a real pain in the butt for Donald Trump. So what Donald Trump is going to do is basically try to make Iran play ball so that he can do business to make the Middle East, a stable region, and a stable Middle East is good for business. That's Donald Trump's sort of perspective. And with Iran not doing that, Israel hates Iran. Israel wants to basically turn Iran inside out, and Donald Trump just wants Iran to play ball. Those are two countries with similar interests, so they will work together. They work together. Just because they're coordinating does not automatically mean the United States works for Israel. No, it doesn't. That is what you call a what's it called? A non sequitur. I think you also call it, what is it called? A post hoc fallacy? Was it? No, 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 maybe not. Let's just real quick here. Um, Ergo proctor hoc. I think after this, therefore, because of this, representing a logical fallacy where one incorrectly assumes that because one event followed another, the first event caused the second. So it's kind of the same thing, but it's again, it's a cause and effect thing. But the main one is, of course, the non sequitur fallacy. A non sequitur fallacy occurs when a conclusion does not logically follow from the previous argument or evidence, meaning the conclusion is disconnected from the premises. So, I mean, again, it's similar because it's not entirely fallacious to say that the United States is working for Israel. But the point I'm trying to make is correlation does not always mean causation. And a lot of you, the Jews people, are all just about it's, like, see, you know, Donald Trump is going to war for Israel and they're working together. Therefore, Donald Trump's working for that. No, that doesn't follow. That is not the only explanation. And there's another one. And given what we have here, that Israel's not happy with the conditions of the ceasefire, shows that Donald Trump isn't doing everything for Israel. So and he's already several times in this entire conflict told Israel to cut it out, to stop blowing things up. And Israel had to go along with it. So that's one thing, and then you have the Iranian government accusing. There's a lot of stuff that's just we don't really know much of what's going on. There's a lot of chaos right now, so I think it's kind of silly to just go to say one way or another. We don't really know what's going to happen. We really don't know. Israeli strikes in Lebanon, I think I think you can say things like, I've seen people talking about the atrocities that Israel's committing against the Christians in Lebanon and stuff. I get stuff like that. I do. I really, really do. And I'm sympathetic towards it in some ways. But I'm trying to see things as fairly as I possibly can. If I'm Israel and I have countries surrounding me that want to destroy me, how would I be reacting to so many of these things? I would probably try to prevent these countries from being able to seriously get a foothold in any advantage over my country to protect my people. If that means blowing up your people, I'll do it. I have to. I don't have any choice. See, these are the hard choices that leaders have to make that so many of you guys who don't have any experience in foreign politics and none of that stuff don't get and just refuse to get. You guys are just commentators saying words on social media, working average 9 to 5 jobs. You don't know really anything about this. And oh, Chase, you don't know. Well, no, I don't, but I'm sympathetic towards like recognizing the reality of the situation, which is what I've said so many times. I've talked about this so many times. There's what you guys live in fantasy land about the way things ought to be, and there's the simple, hard reality of everything. Just the reality of what you're dealing with. I'm seeing so many people talk about, and again, these are like Christians and stuff talking about the the unchristian ethics that Trump is engaged in constantly, and blah 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 blah, over and over and over again. And I've asked so many of these people, what do you think should be done? Like, what's the what do you what would you do? I don't really get any answers because so many people, it's just easier to complain about things than it's actually is to actually do anything about what's going on. So we sit on social media and we doom scroll, which brings me to the issue of the Panicans, over this whole thing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim victory and say I told you so. Not yet, at least. I'm waiting for that to see if I will be able to actually do that. But when it comes to the Panicans saying, talking, first of all, the Donald Trump tweet on Sunday and everybody losing their collective minds. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting how both the left and so many people on the right are piling in on Donald Trump, and they're using the exact same sources now? I found that I was thinking about that today, and I was like, that's interesting. Now they've both basically merged into one creature in attacking Donald Trump. At one point, it was the left and the establishment right that was attacking Trump when he was first running. Now it's the left, which has gone totally woke, and the woke right is. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but um, it's fascinating to see that. Now, there's a couple other things before I move on, and I forget this that I think are just kind of like problematic for this whole narrative of the woke right, and it's the Jews, everything is the Jews, kind of stuff like that. The Nick Fuenteses and Tucker Carlsons of the world, and I was almost about to hit that bandwagon. I almost jumped on that bandwagon. I was almost there, and then stuff. I started asking questions, and which is where I do today. Here's one of my questions for a lot of these people. And there's their wacky, kooky conspiracy theories and their tinfoil hat stuff. Um, NATO refused to help in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Nobody came to the aid of the United States of Trump. Nobody did. Trump had to do it all by himself. Even Japan didn't come to help, and Trump, from what I understand, was not very happy with that. He had been kind of really cozying up to Japan's new prime minister and everything, and then they kind of let him down a little bit. Um, Nobody came to his help. Now, it seems to me, according to the conspiracy theory, that the Rothschilds are taking over the world. According to that conspiracy theory, the Jews are, they're the world bankers, and they're controlling everything. They're controlling all the banks and everything, all the finances. They're the globe. And I have these friends on Facebook, by the way, so I know the things that they're saying. To me, it's I can sympathize with it because I understand it because I used to think that way. I was kind of on that trail, and I kind of snapped out of it, and now I'm kind of like I try to find actual like serious sources rather than sitting there and trying to figure it out by yourself, kind of like solo scriptura. What that kind of is you and your Bible under a tree. That's what a lot of people have become on the internet these days. It's just they don't know how they the internet gives us so much access to all this information, but we don't really know how to think about the information. That's the problem with the internet. And I was thinking today, I was like, maybe legacy media had a point when they warned about what would happen if you gave free reign to everybody to be spewing information without any control whatsoever. But anyways, but supposedly all of these countries, right? NATO, Europe, they've fallen to the elites, which I guess is synonymous with the Rothschilds and all the Jews. But yet none of them came to the help of the Jews, Israel. but none of them came to help Israel in its war. None of them came to help. I thought Trump was working for the Jews. I thought Trump is the great henchman of the master of all of this. Making doing the bidding. I thought Trump was Saruman for Sauron here. But yet none of the other countries supposedly also under the influence of the Jews came to help. Why? I thought they were all part of the plot. You would think they would all pile in, but none of them did. It was just Trump all by himself. It was like him by himself. Israel sort of helping. The only countries that actually did help, ironically, were the Middle Eastern countries who don't actually care too much for Israel, by the way. And they helped because that was their investments that are getting hit. They're still getting hit, by the way. But isn't that interesting? How does that work in the conspiracy theories? I was kind of trying to ask people a little bit about that, and again, as usual, I don't get any answers. These people are living in echo chambers, really. They listen to too much of the conspiracy peddlers, and never any contrarian opinions that would kind of ask them to kind of ask some questions. It reminds me when I was sitting down one night talking to one of these guys who believes in the Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk conspiracy theory stuff, and I just started asking him some questions. Okay, well, explain to me this. Well, then explain it. And he didn't have any answers for any of these things. I was genuinely like, I didn't know the answer. I was like, help me understand this then, because that seems to me to be a problem with your conspiracy theory. Excuse me. And there was no answer. He didn't have anything. Just didn't think about any of that stuff. Just because you're living in echo chambers, you're living in like a positive feedback loop. Just and all that stuff. See, that's for me. That's what happened to me. I got exposed to a lot of that stuff. People just asking me questions and suddenly going, well, I guess that other idea kind of makes sense. I didn't think about that before. Oh, okay. Um, but back to the Panicans. You know, I would I have been quiet, but I've been quiet for a reason. Mainly because, like I said, I've already said my piece. Why continue to beat a dead horse? Why continue to put myself in a situation where I want to rip my hair out, like so many of these people, doom scrollers and doom posters do? And I look at these people. I'm like, gosh, you look so miserable. You look like you're just miserable. I don't want to be like that. So I'm not gonna be part of that. I want to talk about things that are actually going to be helpful and help people see things better. And if it's not doing that, then there you go. But I really think I was talking to a friend about this, who's also being quiet as I have been. Where we've been talking to each other, and he's been giving me some cool, interesting information. He's got some sources, and so far the sources have been pretty accurate. So I trust these sources. But the doom scrollers, I told him, what I think is happening is we're online so much, we're on the internet so much, and that's increasing our anxiety levels, and increased anxiety levels tends to lead to negative thinking. And that's when you're having negative thoughts, your brain kind of refeeds that sort of negativity back to itself until you kind of force yourself to break that cycle. But if you don't do that actively, your brain just continues to refeed this stuff. There's a part of the brain. I was talking to a friend about this over lunch one time. He was explaining some of this to me on a different context, but I wonder if it has the same thing to do with here. Like it's just a negative feedback loop. And you just instinctively see the worst case scenarios and just go with those. Like, so is that happening with Tucker Carlson? Is that happening with Megyn Kelly and all these guys who've just lost their collective minds? Alex Jones. I told my friend, I said, what respect I had for Alex Jones that was building over the last 4 years, it just it was just blown to smithereens in like 3 days. I mean, it's incredible. And to see Alex Jones apparently peddling conspiracy theories that Donald Trump is under some kind of mind control thing, that's a possibility. I'm like, what are we doing here, guys? I mean, this is insane. Have you ever just taken a moment? It's like that whole. Oops, let me make sure here that I didn't just unplug my microphone. Okay, it's like that. It's a skit. I forgot what the name of the comedy group is. I love it because it's historical comedy, and I'm a history geek. So, but it's about the two Nazi guys in that the little skit here, and the one guy goes, "Are we the baddies?" Suddenly, the self reflection kicks in. Like, have you ever thought like maybe I'm the dumb one? Maybe I'm because I think about that all the time because I've listened to somebody say something and I don't get what they're saying, and I'm like, sometimes I'll just go, "Am I the idiot? Am I missing something?" Like, I feel like I'm the dumb one. But sometimes no, but other times maybe, you never know. What if you're the one who's missing something? For me, I don't know. I try my best. I try my best to always step back and just try to count the forest from the trees and just go, whoa, just step back here. Let's just assess everything. Let's take everything in and assess it. I think there's so many people right now because you're chronically online. Your anxiety is through the roof. I think that tends to cause you to become very, very, very reactionary and not actually try and like put things together. And so you're just reacting to the next thing. That just boom, 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 and it's always negative reactions because your anxiety is through the roof. And but I say that because when we let's go to Trump's tweet from Sunday, right? Everybody losing their minds that he's going to nuke Iran. And I didn't know about this because I'm not paying attention to this stuff. I don't sit there on Twitter all day long. I'm not even on Twitter. I used to be, but I'm not on there anymore. But the most I have is Facebook. That's about it. But I'm suddenly starting to see these posts about Trump about to nuke Iran. And I was like, what's going on here? It's like, and I find out, oh, he's posted a deadline for Iran, or he's gonna, or civilization is gonna be wiped out, basically. Now, nowhere does he actually say he's gonna drop a nuke. That was, from what I can tell, an interpretation of his words, not actually what he said. So it's a bit dishonest to continue to say that Trump was going to nuke them. Where's your evidence? Oh, well, he said that the civilization is going to end. Once again, like I said, that does not automatically follow. It could mean something else. It could mean, and more likely, because I think this was discussed, he was targeting power grids, which would effectively turn the lights off. And, society today relies heavily on power grids, electricity, things like that. Those go off, and, a lot of people are going to die. Which, again, to me, by the way, people who say the United States should crash and burn and the system should collapse, I'm like, I don't know what you're asking. I don't think you realize what you're asking for. But that's another point. So that's probably what he was talking about. Okay, he wasn't talking about nuking anybody because, see, like, why do I believe that? Because why would Trump do that? Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. He would never do something like that because, like I told you, he's a businessman. Have you guys like have any of you been paying attention for the last 9 or so years to Donald Trump? It doesn't seem like any of you have. He's all about the business. He wants to make a deal. That's what he does. That's what Trump does. And he's forcing Iran now to make a deal. From the sources that I have, there's a lot of false information out there right now. And again, everybody's believing Iran. Everything that Iran spews, everybody believes right now because they're undergoing Trump derangement syndrome right now. So they're not going to believe anything that Trump says. They're going to believe everything Iran says, just because it's Trump. Because that's what Trump derangement syndrome is. um, Everything Trump says is bad. Like, again, it's fascinating to see the left and people on the right now using the exact same tactics and also using the exact same sources. So many of the people on the right peddling false sources from CNN. Like, I thought CNN was bad, guys. What do we, you know? But suddenly, I guess they're good. I guess they're okay. So it's weird how that works. Um, all right, so um, I want to go here because I was just curious. I need to do some more videos on my conversations with Grok and ChatGPT. It's fascinating. So this is a conversation I had with Grok today. I was asking Grok questions like, okay, Grok, I want to know. Tell me, without any biases, just give me straight facts. Has Iran ever talked about some kind of end world prophecy, Armageddon kind of thing like that? Yes, they have. Now I want to go through some of that here. So, say I said I want to know, without biases, has Iran in the past stated its desire for some kind of grand Armageddon? So, Grok searches the web and says yes. Iranian leaders and official state institutions have repeatedly and publicly expressed a theological commitment to preparing for, and in some cases, actively hastening the return of the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi. I don't care, the messianic figure in 12er Shia Islam. This eschatology end times belief describes his reappearance as ushering in global justice after a period of widespread chaos, oppression, war, and upheaval against tyrants and arrogant powers, frequently interpreted by regime voices as the U.S., Israel, and the West. This is not framed in Christian terms like grand Armageddon. I get it. Okay, I get that. You know, like sometimes Grok says things that I'm like, okay, I know that, Grok. I was just this just wording that I'm using. Okay, so petty. But it is an explicitly apocalyptic worldview in which major conflict and destruction precedes divine victory. It's kind of interesting to see that that's sort of similar to dispensationalism, but that is, I digress on that point. Iranian officials have described their revolution, foreign policy, and resistance as tools to pave the way for this era. These statements come from presidents, supreme leaders, and state media, not fringe voices, and date back decades, especially under Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. I remember that guy. I wonder if that guy's still alive. 2000 is he still alive? I don't know. 2005 to 2003, but also under Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and in official broadcasting. If I mispronounce his name, oh well, he's dead, so I don't think he cares. Key documented statements and actions. Ahmadinejad. So these are actual leaders, like legitimate sources. You could say you could call them legitimate sources who are saying, yeah, we have to usher in this apocalypse. We have to be part of that and to bring this 12th Imam, whatever, into the world, and he will reign over the world and bring about justice and blah 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 blah. Now I know a lot of you Panicans will say, "Who cares what they say? Why does that matter? Why is it important?" I'll tell you why that's important. If Iran was some teeny little country somewhere in Africa, in the middle of Africa, no one would care. No one would care. But Iran happens to be sitting right smack in the middle of a region of the world that possesses a huge chunk of one of the most essential commodities of the global market. That is absolutely essential. It is the bloodline, the life flow, or the lifeblood of the global economy. If that is disrupted in any serious, meaningful way, the global economy collapses overnight. That's why it matters. Suddenly, if you're an honest thinker, guys, if you're just an honest thinker, you have to look at that and go, oh, well, that kind of changes the game a little bit. You really want a country that is run by a bunch of psychos who are bent on Armageddon and a radical Islamic takeover of the world, who could potentially hold hostage one of the biggest resource commodities in the world. Do we want that? I would say no. I would say no. That cannot be allowed. And Trump recognizes that. And again, I've had people talk to me. They said to me, you know, Netanyahu's been talking about for years that Iran was close to its goals and having its nuke and everything like that, and it's never been true. And I was like, I believe, I get that, dude. I understand that. I really, really do. This isn't about Netanyahu to me, though. I don't trust Netanyahu. I'm not going to trust him as far as I can throw him. but I trust Trump. Trump is the different factor here. He's not Bush. He's not all these other guys. No matter how much you guys try to say that he is, that this is another forever war, it's not. I'm trying to what I'm doing in this section of this video here, guys, is trying to show you that this situation, all the isolationists, we should take care of our own, and that's all that matters, and we shouldn't care about what's going on in the world. Who cares who's running the Middle East as long as we can do like it's like the ignorant comment that the guy who wrote this book right here, Pat Buchanan. Look, I like Pat Buchanan. I think he says a lot of true things in this book, but there's also a lot of things that are just flatly naive. Sorry, they're just very naive about who cares whose flag is flying over what. That it actually does matter. Okay, it actually does kind of matter, because there are certain groups who are ideologically driven, and if their flag is flying over the Middle East, they may decide to tell you, we don't want you, we don't want your business. You're not allowed to take any of this stuff. Well, what the heck are you going to do then? You know, um, that's just one little example. So my point is that okay? Well, let me just quick continue reading here. So, broader regime ideology. The Islamic Republic's founding doctrine, I'm not going to attempt to read that, guardianship of the jurist under Ayatollah Khamenei, positions the clerical regime as a temporary placeholder until the Mahdi's return. Hardline elements, including in the IRGC, have described missiles, militias, and anti-US, anti-Israel actions as paving the way for the Mahdi by creating the necessary conditions of resistance and chaos. State-linked outlets have echoed that the regime is the, quote, government of Imam Mahdi, and that resistance hastens his appearance. Okay. Not every Iranian leader or cleric has emphasized hastening with the same urgency. Some traditional Shia theology stresses passive waiting rather than proactive chaos. Analysis note that Khamenei prioritized regime stability more than Ahmadinejad's overt messianism. Iranian officials consistently frame this as defensive, preparing for divine justice, not a suicidal desire for destruction. They do not publicly say, we want nuclear Armageddon, or use the term Armageddon. I know that. Instead, they speak of fulfilling prophecy through resistance, justice, and the eventual triumph of the Mahdi over oppression. So, you can talk about, the oppressed Iranian people and blah, 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 all you want, but like, are you willing to kind of feed this kind of stuff? I mean, guys, people like this having nuclear weaponry, it's kind of dangerous, don't you think? I think it's a little dangerous. A little dangerous. These beliefs are rooted in 12 verse Shia doctrine. The 12th Imam has been in occultation since the 9th century and will return to fill the world with justice. That basically means Islam. So that's what that means. And you want that? You want to let that happen? You want to allow Iran to get nukes so that it can do that. That it can basically, because with the nukes, Iran will effectively be impossible to stop. They will then use the missile and drone arsenal that they were on the verge of perfecting, according to Trump. Admittedly, according to Trump, and I trust him. Maybe you don't, fine, whatever. But I think it was a chance you couldn't take, because the alternative to responding to that potential threat by ignoring it, the alternative, I think, is simply irreversible and costly to the United States. I really, really do. So I don't blame Trump for taking the chance, or taking the doing what he did. I think he felt like he had to. He had no choice. But again, a lot of you guys are going to disagree. You're going to continue to peddle the whole. They've been saying that for years. Again, to me, comments like that are representative of people who don't understand any of this stuff. You don't get it. You just don't. You don't understand geopolitics. You never have, and you never really will continue to think like this. I used to be like that, man. I understand how you guys think, but it's stupid and ignorant. Okay, it. Not saying you are. I'm saying it. Your beliefs are stupid and ignorant. They will get more people killed. Well, not not if what I'm saying is right. Maybe in this case you were right, but you continue to act like that and gamble on things like that. Eventually, you're going to be fatally wrong, and people are going to die, and it's going to be your fault. Thank goodness people like you aren't in power. And I hope and I pray it stays that way. So I just asked questions. I continue to ask them questions. If they're a matter of public record, it seems to make a lot of sense as to why allowing these people to have nuclear capabilities is a bad idea, especially when they're located in a region that produces a huge amount of the world's oil supply. So Grok replies, your observation touches on two core empirically grounded concerns that have shaped decades of international debate over Iran's nuclear program. One, the regime's publicly documented eschatological ideology, preparing for the Mahdi's return amid chaos and the defeat of, quote, arrogant powers. And two, Iran's geographic position astride the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for global energy supplies. So it talks about the ideology factor. As established previously, Iranian leaders and state institutions have repeatedly reframed the Islamic Revolution resistance against the U.S. and Israel and regional activities as steps to pave the way for Imam Ahmad Mahdi's reappearance. This involves an era of upheaval, justice, through divine victory, and the subjugation of oppressors. The subjugation of oppressors. That's, to me, that's a direct threat against people like you and me. You and I are going to become, well, he talks about the oppressors, right? But you think they're going to stop at that? Of course they're not. These people, they're not going to stop at that. You and I become subjugated to that, you know? Hardline voices, including the IRGC, have linked this to missiles, proxies, and anti-Western actions. Some analysts argue this worldview reduces the deterrent value of mutually assured destruction, since certain regime elements view major conflict as potentially hastening prophecy rather than something to avoid at all costs. Okay, so this is not all monolithic. Not monolithic. Iran maintains an official fatwa by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and echoed by successors, declaring nuclear weapons haram, forbidden under Islamic law. I read that and I was like, okay, yeah, but you do realize they're allowed to lie. Islam is supposed to succeed at any cost. So rules be damned when the means justify or the ends justify the means. So that's why you can't trust these people. They've their own rules openly say you can lie to pervert to further the cause of Islam. So like, well, they're actually not allowed to do that. So their own law prevents it. It's like their own rules say they can lie. So why should I take that seriously? Like, come on, So I read that and I was like, okay, get Brock, The U.S. intelligence has long assessed no active weaponization effort as of recent 2025-2026 reporting, though Iran has advanced enrichment capabilities. Critics of the apocalyptic threat narrative point out that Shia eschatology traditionally emphasizes that Mahdi ending chaos rather than Iran deliberately triggering global suicide. And that regime behavior has often prioritized survival and power projection over millenarian self-destruction. Okay, so the Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman through which roughly 20 to 21 million barrels per day of crude oil and petroleum products transited in 2025, accounting for about 20% of global petroleum liquids consumptions and 25 to 27% of seaborne oil trade. Much of this originates from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, Kuwait, and Iran itself, with the majority heading to Asia, especially China. So again, remember what I said in a couple of videos ago, that a lot of this has to do with China, isolating China. I still have people who just refuse to admit that. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm telling you guys, the long game here is about China. I'm just telling you, okay? But I can lead a horse to water, I can't make him drink it. Okay, Iran has repeatedly threatened and demonstrated capability to disrupt shipping here using mines, anti-ship missiles, fast attack boats, and proxies. Okay. So this is just some more stuff about nuclear capabilities. Grok mentioned something here that made me ask this question at this point. I forgot what it was, and I don't want to go too long here. So I said, I'm curious. Let's assume the U.S. is fully energy independent and taps into the full potential of oil reserves in the Western Hemisphere. In that scenario, could the United States just completely ignore Middle East tensions? Would the Middle East still affect the United States economy? And Grok says, no, even in this hypothetical scenario of full U.S. energy independence plus maximized Western Hemisphere oil reserves, the United States could not completely ignore Middle East tensions. The Middle East would continue to affect the U.S. economy in meaningful ways, primarily through global oil pricing, but also via broader trade, inflation, and financial channels. Oil is a globally fungible commodity traded on integrated world markets, so supply disruptions anywhere, especially in the Persian Gulf, drive price changes everywhere, including in the U.S. So once again, I am I'm sorry, guys. Like this is so beyond dispute at this point. This is about oil. That's what this is about. Okay. There are other things in the immediate sense that it's about Iran and nukes and blah blah. But like I told you guys, if Iran was in the middle of the Congo, if that's where Iran was, nobody would care. But it's because of where it's at, and where it's at is happens to sit in a region that is loaded with oil. That's why it's important. Guys, let's just be honest. Let's stop trying to pretend this is something other than what it is. Let's just face the facts, okay? Just face the facts. Just face it. Just accept it. Stop trying to fight it because you guys, so many of you panicans, are just getting more and more angry. And I would suggest to you the reason why you're getting angry is because you just refuse to face the facts. The truth of the matter is, this is not just about regime change. This is not about Israel doing the bidding of Israel. That's not what any of this is about. This is about Donald Trump positioning the United States to be and remain the global superpower. And as I've said repeatedly in videos, I don't I this is not about ideological issues to me. This is about pragmatism. This is a purely pragmatic issue for me. And I've had people, friends on my own Facebook, who say that I'm pro greed and whatever. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm for. I'm not pro greed. You know what I'm pro? Just if you're watching this, I'm pro you not losing your way of life. That's what I'm pro. That's what I want. I want you to wake up every morning, be able to make your breakfast without fear, to then make your cup of coffee and drink it and listen to your Bible or read your Bible. I got tons of Bibles over here. I can just choose from whatever one I want to read. Just this surplus of stuff, and go to work, do what you got to do your 9 to 5, and then come home and relax for the rest of the day. Watch your Netflix, do whatever you want to do, go to bed, and there you go. That's what I want for you. And for that to keep up, the United States must exist. And not only that, it has to have the bigger stick. That's what I want. This is not about Donald Trump and his Looney Tune spiritual advisors. I get all that stuff. That's bad. Okay, I can admit that that's really, really bad. But that doesn't change the fact that Donald Trump, when he is doing stuff like this, the dude is locked in. He's locked in. And for me, that is somebody who, if we want to use the emperors of Rome, or Paul appealing to Rome when he was arrested or whatever, that's not Paul saying, "Oh, Rome is so great, and I support Rome and its greedy imperialism." No, that's just Paul taking advantage of an opportunity. That's all he's doing, and that's the way I look at it. I don't have to be a cheerleader for Trump and his administration to recognize that I just simply want to live in a world in which I can just wake up and not have to worry about my world blowing up. Now you might say, well, what about those people over there? I don't want that for them either. And I don't think Donald Trump wants that for them either as well. And we want this to stop. But so if you want this to stop as well as me, well, why don't you tell Iran, what's left of the Iranian leadership, to cut it out, because they've lost. They have lost. I don't care what any of these media outlets are telling you they've lost. They have nothing left. Okay. The fact that after Trump threatens to take out their power grid, not nuke them, but take out the power grid, tells you, and that they blinked, tells you they know they got nothing left. But they're trying so hard because they're an honor bound people. To them, honor comes before pragmatic means. That's what it is for them. Again, it's romanticism. It's not dealing with reality. Like a lot of you guys aren't dealing with reality. A lot of when I say you guys, I don't. Not everybody who's watched, but most people who watch my videos, people that don't like me, don't care about what I have to say, and I'm just telling them the reality, and that's what they hate. So, why global oil markets still matter? So I asked this question because I was talking to a friend of mine about some of this stuff, and he just basically proposed. I started bringing a lot of this stuff up to him. He's talking about us, the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, and this is an unjust war, and we gotta get out. And that we should just get out of there. And Trump is a warmonger, and all that conspiracy theory stuff. And I asked him. I said, "Hey, okay, I'm going to grant you this. I'm just going to grant you. Okay, let's just say tomorrow we throw Benjamin Netanyahu to the side completely. We break off our alliance with them. We stop funding them. We stop giving them billions of dollars a year. We just completely throw Israel to the curb. Okay, let's say we do that. That still leaves you with the problem of this. Uh, the global economy and Iran having a nuke and using that power if it gets to that point to basically hold the Middle East hostage. You still have that problem. How do you solve that problem?" And he just basically goes, "Well, we could solve that problem by just, we just drill for oil here in Alaska." And I'm like, see, I read that and I go, see, that's the problem. See, that's the problem right there. That's it. See, you guys are just not thinking about everything. You're tunnel visioned on this idea. You have this romantic idea that if we just stayed here in America and we didn't bother the rest of the world, everything would go so well and just be so happy and just that's the stuff that makes me want to pull my hair out because it is so far from an actual realistic scenario. It is, I mean, it's just way off the reservation. It makes it makes sense when you're just in feedback loops with people who already agree with the same thing. But if you actually take the time and step out and do a lot of things that I have done that have caused me to change my mind over the last year. So I've studied a lot of history and the history of geopolitics, and that has really made me have to reevaluate so much of my former libertarian views and how incredibly stupid, moronic, and naive that they were. You can't just ignore what's happening around the world, especially when you're a great power, when you're a major power player in the world affairs. You can't do that. You just can't. I wish you could. I really wish you could. I'm with you. I wish that could be the case, but it isn't. And that's the thing, guys. Again, I say over and over and over again, that's just not what you're dealing with. But again, so okay, Western Hemisphere reserves don't change this dynamic. The hemisphere already holds enormous potential. Venezuela alone has the world's largest proven reserves, up to 300 billion barrels. That's a lot. Followed by significant resources in the U.S., Permian Basin and beyond, Canada, oil sands, Brazil, pre-salt offshore, and Guyana, rapidly growing. Full development could theoretically flood global markets with non-Middle East supply over time. However, ramping up, especially Venezuela's heavy oil, requires years of investment, infrastructure, and billions in capital. Even then, the extra supply would still trade in the same global pool. A major Gulf disruption, e.g., some 20 to 25% of seaborne oil and significant LNG fertilizer trade through the Strait of Hormuz, creates a worldwide shortfall that raises prices before hemisphere barrels can fully offset it. So basically, all that's just basically saying, to condense all this down, saying, even if we did what my friend, my social media friend, I've actually met this guy in real life, and he's a nice guy. But he's over the last couple of years, I think, all due respect, he's been getting into some wacky, crazy views. But so basically, what this means is, summing it all up, even if we took his incredibly simplistic approach, that's not really thinking things through, it's just a quick, it doesn't really change anything. You still have to be paying attention to what's happening in the Middle East. The Middle East still matters. It doesn't matter if you tapped into all the potential here. The Middle East is still a huge, significant factor in everything. Yeah, so you just can't. You can't ignore it. I wish you could. Again, I wish we could. But we can't. So this is the stuff that my point here is that all these non-interventionalist people, Tucker Carlson and whatever, they it's the naive view that we can just, let's just, it would save us tons of money. We can, if we brought all of our troops home. Look, there are places in the world I think our troops don't need to be in. Sure, yeah, absolutely. The Middle East, unfortunately, is one of them that I think we have to stay in. Or I think what Donald Trump wants to do is he wants to get all these countries in the Middle East to be able to take care of themselves so that we don't have to have a big presence in the Middle East. I think that's what he wants. He wants everybody to take care of themselves. Trump wants, see, I think Trump does want us to be a more or less non interventionist country where we're dealing mostly with domestic issues. I think that's what he wants, and I think he's trying to create the grounds for that in the future. A future he probably won't be president to see. But that takes time. And this brings me, guys, this is really what I want to talk about last. This brings me to back to the Panicans in this last section here. I'm going long here, so I'm trying to make this in 10 minutes. This brings me back to the Panicans. Um, you know, Before Trump was threatening Iran, they were all saying, this guy's nuts, he's crazy, and we got to invoke the 25th, and then the ceasefire happens, more or less. But the ceasefire happens, Trump backs down, and now all of a sudden they're all saying, yeah, see, he didn't have the guts to do it. Like, I mean, that is like, oh my gosh, like that's like I really liked what the quartering had to say. Jeremy Hambley said, he said, everybody who's doing this, you deserve to be thrown off the internet. And like I'm like, yeah, like their internet capabilities should probably be revoked if it were possible. These I cannot take these people seriously anymore. The Tucker Carlsons, the Megan Kellys, Nick Fuentes, all these people, morons, can't take them seriously anymore. Um, because over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, they've been proven wrong. They just have. I'm sorry, they've been proven wrong. And again, it's I think what it is being chronically online, creating anxieties, and it fuels this negative feedback, where you can only perceive the worst case scenarios. But I think all of this has really been eye opening for a particular reason. All of this woke right people, the woke right, whatever you want to call them, all of these people voted for Donald Trump. They were all like, yes, let's get him back in, and let's make America great, and all this stuff. And they're all pumped and everything like that. And Trump, when he's inaugurated, like when everybody's saying things like this is what I voted for, I always want to say, well, apparently you weren't paying attention, because everything that you see happening, Trump said he was going to do. Tough on Iran. Things are going to get really tough for a while. Things like that. Trump said that this was all going to happen. Apparently you guys weren't paying attention, because that's exactly what you voted for. Sorry, again, the truth bombs, the inconvenient truths. It is what it is. Swallow it, take it like a man, and deal with it. That's certainly what I voted for. But you got people right now. The last couple of days been crying and pissing and moaning that their gas prices went up and all this kind of stuff. So much just complaining and wham, this is life is terrible for us here in the United States now. The economy is dying. It's going bleh. It's like, man, have any of you guys ever actually like taken the time to see what third world countries are like? Like, it's just everything right now is just first world problems with all of you guys. It's sad. It's pathetic. Because your gas prices are going up for a while. The trends seem to be indicating they're about to come back down. And you're going to find something else to complain about. And you do that because, again, you're chronically online and you can't think of anything good. So it's just panic after panic, and it's doomsday scrolling, doomsday posting after doomsday, whatever. But all of these people complaining about this, basically what you're seeing, what I think is happening right now, this is what I think it is. You are witnessing the masks come off, and you see people for who they really are. Again, he said things are going to be tough. This isn't going to suddenly get fixed overnight. We're going to have to go through some tough things in order for things to get better. It's a lot like, you know, recovering from a major injury or something like that, and finally going through the process of actually rehabilitation. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, it's not fun. And in the process of all that stuff, whining and complaining about it. It's just like, this isn't right. Why am I going through this? And, well, because it takes that to get better, to get into a position where you're no longer going to be in pain and you can actually walk or whatever again and be okay. That's what we're going through. I consider this, I think, what we're going through are growing pains. And as we're going through these growing pains, everybody's whining like little children about it. Just whining like little first world children, spoiled little brats. And so what you're seeing right now, guys, the masks are coming off. All of these people who spoke the loudest for Donald Trump are now they've all turned on him. They've all completely turned on him. You know why? Because all the time that they were talking about make America great and whatever, in reality, what they were asking for is make my life comfortable, make it easy. Just snap your finger and everything gets cheap. We've all got jobs and just sailing into the sunset. That's what they really were asking for. They don't want to have to deal with the hard work it actually will take to really truly to actually, you know, it is refusing to actually do the work of cleaning the wound so that it can heal properly. It's just ignoring it. It's just like, let's just take some painkillers. Let's just drink it down, and now that'll make me feel better. Because we want things now. We want it now, 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 now. Give me, now, now, now. I want it right now. I want to feel good right now. That's what we want. We don't want to have to work for it. We don't want to have to go through the suffering and the struggling and what it's going to actually take. Donald Trump wants to do that. Donald Trump is like, this is what we have to do. I mean, again, he's locked in. Whatever you guys want to say about him, the dude is locked in. He knows he has his goals, set. Like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to get to that point. It's going to take this, it's going to take this, and then we got to do this, and then we got to do that. It takes time. You don't just go, that's where I want to be, and then just boop, I'm there. You don't as much as you may want to take a plane and just take you there, it just doesn't work that way. It's going to be work. It's going to be struggling. There's going to be suffering. And all these people have proven to you and me that all that big talk about making America great was a bunch of fluff. It's just a bunch of fluff. All they want is to go back to their comforts, to where things are just nice and easy. That's what I think. I think that's what this whole thing has proven. The masks came off. They've absolutely come off. And you're seeing these people for who they really are. I say cowards. That's what I think. That's what I say that they are. They want things now. That's why you have Candace Owens saying we want justice for Charlie. We want to know who killed him right now. Even though in reality it's called a trial. You're supposed to go through the trial, and that takes time to do. Maybe you should shut your mouth and let the trial do its thing. But no, we want answers right now. We want it right now, 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 now. See, we're just living in a culture of now, now, and now. We got to get our dopamine hits. We got to get our fix right now. Gotta need it. I'm freaking addicted. I'm addicted to social media, and I need my fix right now. Just you guys got any more of that social media? Like that's what it is. And I compare myself to that, and I'm because like for me, like I make fun of that stuff. I don't know what that world is like. I mean, maybe I did for a time, but dude, I just went outside right a little while ago. I made a cup of coffee, went outside, watched the sunset, and I just sat there and I just chilled. I haven't said anything about this whole ceasefire thing until now. No real rush to do it. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make a little video about it and just talk about this stuff, and that was it. I was like, I'm chill, dude. I mean, when I talk about these things, yeah, I get a little worked up, sure. But I can after I make this video, I'm done. I'm gonna post it, and then I'm gonna go back to my writing my novel writing. I'm going to go back to making some few articles here and there, working on that stuff, and then thinking about what I'm going to do this weekend. Probably going to do some cleaning. I need to do it, and then more writing, some scripture studies and stuff like that. I'm just do stuff like that. Then I'm going to go to church on Sunday, and I go to my parents' house afterwards. Well, after church, I usually go home because I get socializing out. I take a nap, eat something, make a cup of coffee, sit on my balcony again, and just enjoy the view for a while. And then I go to my parents' house, smoke a cigar with my dad. We just sit out there and we just talk, and then get ready for the week. You know, it's all fine with me. And you know what I think it is for me. First of all, I don't engage in the doom scrolling, so my anxiety levels. I can't relate to everybody about their anxieties. So I think that's good for me. But I just kind of like I can't change these things. What's going on in the world right now, I can't change any of it. I can talk about it like I'm talking about it right now, but I can't change it, and neither can you. You can't change it. So my what I want to leave you here with, because I don't want to just be Mr. Negative Nanny or whatever. My encouragement to you, as a Christian especially, is to go, he's right. We can't, but what can we do? Other than just go on social media and whine and complain about things we can't actually change and become angry that we can't change them. And so again, it's another negative feedback loop. What can we do? I got a few ideas. Number one, turn it off. Number two, start thinking about and getting involved in your local church and what are ministries that your local church is doing. What are they doing? Are they doing any kind of outreach, any evangelistic outreach? Are they, whatever? Get involved in that stuff. Do that. Make disciples. There's a lot of people in your churches who are probably hurting for some personal reasons, not to do with any of this, but some personal reasons, and see how you can help them. What can you do? Little things like that. Do that stuff. What if we did more of that? You want to see change? Be the change. Stop going on social media and complaining about it. Be the actual change. I promise you, when you make that your focus, most of this stuff is just kind of like you just don't spend too much time on it because you're on social media and social media is where intelligence goes to die and hope is nowhere to be found. But you know where hope is found? It's found with the people that you know in the places that you live. I guarantee you those I could post so many screenshots, of people of my guys I go downtown with. I have so many screenshots I could show you of them taking pictures of me praying for people right there on the street who come up to me and say, I need prayer for this, I need prayer for that, and I, and getting to do that kind of stuff, encouraging them, reading scripture to them, sharing the gospel with them, and just being a light to them right there. I can show you tons of those things and how amazing it is to be able to be a part of something like that. That's where the hope is. And if you participate in that, yeah, it's kind of scary because it's not all rainbows and sunshines. You're going to encounter some really weird people out there. But there is a sense and a feeling that you get from doing something like that. It's just simply indescribable. I can't really describe it to you. You got to go and experience it. Now, my encouragement to you as I close this, go to the places where there's actually hope. It's good for you mentally, it's good for you spiritually, and it's good for other people. And it glorifies God. So turn all of this off. Just turn it off, guys. Just shut it off. Just leave it be. You can change none of it. Go make a difference with people in your life or people who live in your communities that you don't even know, strangers. Go and make a difference there. That's what I leave you with here. Sola Deo Gloria. God bless.